Charlotte, thank you for joining us. It's lovely to see you. What's the urgency for digitising public services?
I mean, we live in a digital and a mobile world, and we know that citizens expect, consumers expect, to engage in a digital and mobile way. So I think it's one of those things that governments cannot avoid moving into, but they also can see the real benefits of it. Right? So if you engage digitally with consumers, you can make the experience better, faster, more efficient, and you can pursue some really important government policy agenda items. Being able to engage, for example, with small businesses, you can do that digitally in a way you can't do that when you're working analog or manual. So it's important in two respects, both in how you engage with citizens, but more importantly, how you pursue policy objectives.
And building up some of the trust and the transparency and etc., which helps.
Right, and that gets us to the topic of data, doesn't it?
Exactly.
So, consumers having access to the data, having the ability to consent, and governments have to be role models in that as well.
So how does Visa Government's solutions team, how do they help in this?
So our payments solutions actually really enable a lot of those policy agendas. In fact, we've really been working in this space for a long time, and in a way it started with engaging around transit. I don't know how many times you've gone to a city around the world and thought, oh my goodness, how do I kind of even understand how to get on the metro?
Yeah.
But being able to have open loop payments on a metro gives you the confidence to try. And that into also will help people be able to make sustainable choices. So it started with transit.
And London and the Olympics?
London Olympics was a good example of that. And then if you think of how it's evolved, and the pandemic really helped that, people starting to think about how you use digital solutions to solve problems that emerged through the pandemic. Actually, one of my very favourites is in Spain, where we partnered with one of our clients and the government to effectively create virtual food banks when the food bank shut down. Because cards, of course, allow you to load the ability to pay and to target where they're going to be paid. So you can create virtual food banks by giving people a virtual card, allowing them to spend it in supermarkets.
And quickly, and as you say, targeted to the right people.
Yes, and of course, in this environment, it's always incredibly important to make sure you are getting the money to the right people. And the burgeoning of digital identity and biometrics, many of which we support, help that to happen. So
what do you think are the benefits for governments in digitising their services?
So there are a number of benefits, and you talk about them in the report. One is, of course, how you think about citizens' engagement with the government. We all, of course, enjoy paying our taxes, but we also enjoy the occasional refund as well. And having a way to digitally land your tax declarations, and then when received and processed, to get the money back efficiently, makes that engagement with government a lot better, a lot more efficient, a lot more trustworthy. So that aspect of communication with citizens has been, I think, working well, and we've seen many countries around the world really adopting that. Then there is the increasing emphasis on how do you support policy objectives. So your example we talked about earlier was New Zealand. So in New Zealand, they're starting to use payment data to think about how do you plan tourism. Because of course, when you've got payment data, you can see where tourists might come from. A card is issued in Spain or in the US, and you can see where those tourists like to travel and plan for that. So there's ability to really plan all the provision of public services that make tourism continue to grow. I actually think there's a very important area around small businesses as well. So all governments are signed up to or believe in supporting the small business community. It's such an important part of
backbone,
50% of all employment. And being able to interact digitally with small businesses, pay them quickly, means that you can pursue those really important policy objectives more efficiently and more effectively than you probably could in the past.
Another one that I know is important to you is increasing inclusion and diversity and targeting payments and understanding the more vulnerable.
Definitely. And we live in a digital and a mobile world. So when governments can build for mobile, actually you can reach many more citizens. So again, a really awesome example, I think, is Rwanda, where only 35% of the population is banked, but way more people have a phone that's able to take and give payments. So we've actually worked with them so that 55% are paying online, way above the proportion that are banked. And that's really reaching into a different segment of society and including them in a different way.
It's a great example. I think another one we should talk about is a fabulous initiative across Ukraine with the DIAA.
Yes, and I think what Ukraine has done has actually been something of a role model of where we want to go going forward.
Yeah.
Because being able to establish digital identity offers so many more possibilities. So one of the things I think we're all thinking about in Europe is the number of refugees and the kinds of flows of funds across Europe. So, you know, if you're trying to set up a new life in Bulgaria, in Poland, and all the countries that have welcomed Ukrainian refugees, you need to be banked. And to be banked, you have to have a digital identity. And that, you know, to the degree to which European countries can accept the identity that Ukraine has provided, really opens up, you know, enables people to become consumers. And once you become a consumer, you're part of life. I think that's been a tremendous initiative and a model for many countries.
Another question, how do governments go about this? It's not just on them.
No, it's not. And actually, this is a change from what's been there in the past, where effectively all these systems have been managed themselves. As they move into a digital environment and have many different use cases, I think this is where public-private partnerships really play through. And both of us on the professional services side and also on the payment side and then broadly on the financial ecosystem, making sure we understand the policy objectives that governments have and helping them to understand what we can offer. But this feels to me, and the evidence suggests, that it's a real space where public and private to work together in a very different way.
I think another message that came out of the report was about the real desire to move to a more open economy, to make it easier and more transparent for others to join.
Yeah, I think, you know, our model has to be, in a digital and mobile world, the government should be as accessible in your mobile. Yeah. You may not want it all the time, but in terms of their services and solutions as anything else, you know, increasingly there's a lack of tolerance for anything but a great use case in that environment. And government's engagement with citizens and experience with citizens is so important to the credibility and trust in that government.
And how would Visa like to partner on these initiatives or support them?
I mean, it's really to do what we have done before and have always done, which is it's always an ecosystem. It's always through partnership. So I've talked about examples of virtual food banks. I can talk about examples of cattle markets in Bangladesh, but it's always with financial services sector, with government, and with all of those who are innovating to create new solutions for businesses and consumers.